Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hari Om. We can get started with prayers.
सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। गीता ध्यानम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिभूतितां भगवतां नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणी भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनी त्वामनुसंस्तदामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे तुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्रा येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय तोत्रवैत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोक्ता गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता तं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीवला शल्यग्राहवती कृष्णवहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरननति कैवर्तककेशवः। पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटम् नानाज्ञानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाभूदितम्। लोके सज्जन षट्परैरहरः पीयमानं मुदा भूयाद् पंकज कलिमल प्रध्वंसि न श्रेयसे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लङ्घयति गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम्। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुवन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदे गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुः सुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः। देवाय तस्मै नमः। देवाय तस्मै नमः।
Hari Om. So In the previous chapter, across the chapter, we saw that Bhagavan Sri Krishna advocates renunciation of action to Arjuna. And then yet again, in the end of the chapter, in the last verse, he instructs Arjuna to get up and perform action. This leads Arjuna to ask his next question, which is the first verse of chapter 5, which is Karma Sannyasa Yoga, for which we are doing revision today. So we'll go through the first verse.
Arjuna uvacha sannyasam karmanam Krishna punaryogam cha shamsasi yachreya etayorekam tanme bruhi sunischitam.
So Arjuna says, "Oh Krishna, you praise renunciation of action and then you praise Karma Yoga. And you actually asked me to do Karma Yoga. Tell me with certainty, O Krishna, which of these two is the superior and the one that leads to ultimate goal, and hence the one that I should be focusing upon and I should abide by." Now, this question for students of the Bhagavad Gita, this question raises a question in the mind for the students, which is, what is the difference between what Arjuna is saying now and what Arjuna said in the beginning of chapter 3? And this is an important distinction for us to understand. So in the beginning of chapter 3, Arjuna had said, and I'll say the verse, Arjuna vacha jayase chet karmanaste mata buddhir janardana tatkim karmani gore mam niyojayasi keshava. So Arjuna said, "Oh Janardana, oh Keshava, if in your considered opinion, wisdom is greater than action, then why do you engage me and why do you urge me to perform this action, especially when it is terrible, the war, action of war?" So to understand this distinction, it is important to have an idea of the spiritual path. That is why I requested that it will be nice for you to go through it today. That must be kept in context. In the spiritual path, we'll see two milestones. One milestone which is belonging to the ignorant, and the other which belongs to the wise. The ignorant and the wise. Now, in any field, we have ignorant and the wise. You know, if you have to become a doctor, once you get your MBBS degree, once that milestone is achieved, you are a doctor. You can practice as a doctor. You have the knowledge that is required to be a doctor. But prior to that, you are ignorant in that field. And that's true for any other field. So similarly, in spirituality, there is a milestone which is defined for a person to become wise, quote unquote. So essentially, whether the person is knowledgeable in that field or not, in spirituality, Ajnana or the ignorant is one who does not have experiential wisdom. That is Aparoksha Jnana. Paroksha Jnana is something that is scriptural wisdom that comes from the text, reading the text. In the spiritual path, once you are done with Guru Upasadana, which means you are seeking guidance from the Guru, and the Guru starts instructing, and when the Guru starts instructing, you go through Sravana and Manana. And at that time, you get Paroksha Jnana. And as you progress, then you get knowledge enough into which you can focus upon, into which you can absorb. And when you focus upon that knowledge that you have gained through the instruction of the scriptures and the Guru, when that happens, you go deeper and deeper. You get into Nididhyasana. And after that, you get into Vividisha Sannyasa. And through Vividisha Sannyasa, we get Aparoksha Jnana. That is like the quote-unquote counterpart for the MBBS degree. A Vijnani is a person who has Aparoksha Jnana, experiential wisdom of one's own true nature, the Tattva Jnana. And with that Tattva Jnana, the true nature of the self, the knowledge of the true nature of the self, that person is naturally fulfilled. The person is not dependent on the external world for self-fulfillment. That person is naturally fulfilled. So the pursuits of these two kind of people, the one who has book knowledge and the one who has experiential wisdom, the Agyani and the Jnani, or the one who is Agyani even before getting book knowledge. The pursuits of these two kind of people are different. One is dependent on the satisfaction that is gained from the external world, while the other is self-fulfilled. A person who is dependent on the external world for satisfaction, who is the Agyani, the ignorant, goes up and down, fluctuates in terms of various experiences that come from the outside world through the extremities. So whether it is Sukha Dukha, Labha Labha, Jaya Jaya, and various other extremities, fluctuates, oscillates between the extreme mental states based upon the external extremities. Karma Yoga is performing action as an offering to Bhagavan, to the higher ideal. And when you perform action as worship to the Lord, to the higher ideal, when you do that, which is what Ishvara Arpana Buddhi, when that happens, such a person realizes that the person does not need to be selfish to be able to derive happiness. And this realization leads to a balanced approach in life. And this kind of a person accepts the fruits that come from the action, the karma phala, as prasada. In the earlier instance, which is what in the beginning of chapter 3, Arjuna was ignorant. He was an Agyani. Not only was he ignorant, he did not even know that he was ignorant. He didn't have the realization that he was ignorant. Whereas in the beginning of chapter 5, Arjuna is still ignorant, continues to be ignorant, but he understands that he does not know. So the young first year student who is so full of life, life and energy, and feels that I can perform the surgery today itself, right now. What's the big deal about it? Right? Doesn't know how to perform the surgery, but thinks that can perform the surgery. In fact, even his family members, friends, everybody think he is a doctor. The minute you get admission into MBBS, hey doc, how are you? That's how you are addressed. Whereas the person who has spent the first year after all the ragada and the ragging and the tough night candle burning and all of that, the person that jnana comes, that oh my God, I don't know anything and there's so much to do. There's so much to achieve, so much more to accomplish. That awareness of being a Agyani, that is where Arjuna is now. He still doesn't know, but he is aware. So the foundation of both the questions are on different mental states. One, a mistaken sense of belief that I know. The other, still not willing to do karma yoga, wants to get out of the battlefield, but at least understands that I do not indeed know. So earlier he asked Bhagavan why he cannot directly get to Samadhi Abhyasa and become a Vidvat Sannyasi. Especially when Bhagavan praised it so much in chapter 2. Directly performing surgery before even completing first year of MBBS. Directly getting on top of the Mount Everest as if a helicopter could drop you there. Right? Without traversing the path, the climb that needs to be taken to get there. So Arjuna has assumed that he already has Tattva Jnana and experiential wisdom, Aparoksha Jnana. He thinks that he can directly immerse into Samadhi, or at least the Samadhi Abhyasa. And he says, I'll give up karma and also give up Shravana Manana Nididhyasana and just sit in Samadhi. He actually tells Arjuna, let's just go and sit in Samadhi. And at that time, Bhagavan responded saying, Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam Karma Yogena Yoginam. Oh Arjuna, you are still a Karma Yogi. You must do Karma Yoga. Sankhya is meant for the Jnana Yogis. and you are not a Jnani till now. Now with his understanding and with his misconception removed, Arjuna knows and he also accepts that he's a Jnani. At the same time, like I said, not interested in performing his duty. Although he's aware that he needs to perform, or that is at least his duty. So he asks Bhagwan whether he should actually do Karma Yoga, which is what Bhagwan told him at the end of the 4th chapter. Get up and do your duty, fight. Or should he practice Shravana Manana Nididhyasana? Renunciate the duty, the action, to do Shravana Manana Nididhyasana. Being an Ajnani and also not having the authority, not being the Adhikari, not having the qualification, without Sadhana Chatushtaya, one takes up Karma Yoga. But being an Ajnani but having the qualification, so I have got my MBBS degree, but I still need to, I have not done my first surgery, right? So with Sadhana Chatushtaya, with the qualification, one takes up Shravana Manana Nididhyasana. So now let us see with this question, what does Bhagavan reply to Arjuna?
Shri Bhagavanuvacha Sanyasat Karma Yogascha Nishreyasakaravubhau Tayostu Karma Sanyasat Karma Yogo Vishishyate.
So now Bhagavan tells Arjuna, both renunciation and yoga of action, both sannyasa and karma yoga, both of them, they are capable of bringing ultimate good, the Nishreya. But of these two, Arjuna, the practice of karma yoga is superior, vishishyate, to the renunciation of action. And why does Bhagavan say this to Arjuna at this stage? Because remember, he may have the qualification, but he doesn't have the knowledge. Immersion without knowledge, what happens in Shravana, where one is supposed to listen to the Guru, at that stage, at that time, one is listening, one is hearing, but not listening. Either you're in from one ear and removing it from the other ear, or you're not grasping. It's going through your sensory faculties, but there is no comprehension. So in Shravana, hearing yes, but no listening. In Manana, what happens in Manana? In Manana, you ask questions, you engage in dialogue, you clear your doubts, you challenge the Guru, like Arjuna is doing now. Repeatedly asks Krishna, Bhagavan, tell me decisively what is to be done. Even now he says, decisively, tell me certainly, with certainty, which path should I choose? But the one who does not have the knowledge, there is a risk of that person switching off in Manana. You just don't ask questions. And in Nididhyasana, when you are supposed to get absorbed in the knowledge that you have gained, whatever knowledge that you are learning through the scriptures, when you're supposed to absorb, like that gulab jamun which soaks in the syrup completely to its pores, that is Nididhyasana. When you soak in that knowledge, when you keep going through it again and again and again and again and again, when you go through daily experiences in life and you connect it with that knowledge, that is Nididhyasana. Not necessarily closing your eyes. That is Samadhi. In Nididhyasana, you can experience it, that absorption, and link it to action also. One cannot focus. It just doesn't happen. It's impossible. Either when you're sitting meditating, you're not able to focus and your mind is going all over the place, or when you're acting, you don't link the knowledge to the action. Neither of them, it is impossible to do it. That is why Bhagavan says that both lead to the ultimate goal, the Nishreyas. But Karma Yoga is Vishishyate, is better, is more superior. In any endeavor, the initial process cannot be avoided. like this medicine example, or climbing a mountain. You have to be fit to be able to start climbing. You have to go to the base camp. You have to take it step by step by step by step. You have to acclimatize when you reach a height of 10,000, 11,000 feet. So taking it step by step by step as you climb towards your goal. Similarly, one must properly train for all climbs that one is undertaking as part of life. So Bhagavan clearly, decisively, with certainty, as Arjuna asks, says that Karma Yoga is superior to renunciation of action. And then he continues, we'll move to verse 5.
Yat sankhye prapyati sthanam tad yogairapi gamyati ekam sankyam cha yogam cha yap pashyati sa pashyati.
So Bhagavan says that this firm place, the changeless abode that is reached by the sannyasi, Karma yogis also reach the same place. That sthanam, that firmness of existence. Karma yogi reach exactly the same place that the sannyasi reach. The goal, the path are the same. Ya pashyati sa pashyati. One who is able to see this, sees it. Like we say, you see. So when you see, you see. So Bhagavan is essentially saying and telling Arjuna that Arjuna, shortcuts are not meant to be taken in life, in the spiritual path. Like as in any other path, you cannot take shortcuts in the spiritual path. You have to follow the entire sequence in order. So for you to get to that stage where you can do Shravana Manana Nididhyasana, before that you have to acquire that knowledge through Guru Upasadana. And for you to be able to immerse into Samadhi, what he asked in the beginning of chapter 3, for that you should have the Tattva Jnana, the experiential wisdom. But it is human nature to hurry. Impatience is but natural. But Bhagavan says, no, you got to go through the process. And that he emphasizes in the next verse.
Sanyasastu mahabhaho dukkhamaptum ayogataha yoga yukto munir brahma nachirena gacchati.
So here Bhagavan decisively, clearly says that without Karma Yoga, you cannot renunciate. So, O strong-armed Mahabaho, Sanyasastu is Dukkham Aptum Ayogata. Without Yoga, Ayogataha, without Karma Yoga. Dukkham Aptum, it is difficult to achieve. What? Sannyasa. And one who is harmonized through Karma Yoga becomes a Muni. Munir Brahma becomes a Muni. And without delay, Nachirena, without any chara, without any delay, goes to Brahma, becomes a Muni and reaches Brahman. Earlier also in verse 3.4, Bhagavan says something which is very similar. Na karmanam anarambhan naishkarmyam purushoshnute, verse 4 of chapter 3. So what Bhagavan is saying is na karmanam anarambhan, without starting, without performing, without undertaking anarambham, the duty, by non-performance of duties, naishkarmyam purushosnute. A person does not reach the state of absorption or actionlessness. And then he also adds on, he instructs Arjuna, tadartam karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. That word that Bhagavan uses so often, samachara. For that reason, perform action, free from all attachments, with excellence. And now he is again re-emphasizing the same thing in a different way. He says, without yoga, ayogataha, dukkham aptum sannyasa. It is impossible or it is difficult to achieve renunciation. without getting into the details, without going through your action, without mastering, without performing, without getting that degree, without performing with a sense of excellence and with the result of excellence, it would be difficult to achieve renunciation. So quickly to repeat an example that I had taken when we had covered this verse earlier. It's a beautiful example and I could relate to it, when I was reading this. In the army, you have something called, when we undergo training as officers, to become officers, not as officers, a small correction, to become officers. You're not yet officers, which means you still do not have the jnana, the experiential wisdom, that you're still a student. You have done Guru Upasadhana, you have enrolled yourself in the training, but you're not a qualified officer in the Indian Army. At that time, one of the elements of training is something called Patti Parade, which is you're standing, all of you are standing, and the instructor will say 2 minutes, go change into so-and-so attire and come. There are various attires in the Indian Army for various occasions. To go to battle, a different attire. To go to ceremonial duties, a different attire. Normal day-to-day working, a different attire. There are a number of attires. So 2 minutes, go back, run to your barrack, put on your attire, come back and fall in line, which you were earlier. It's a very short time, believe me, so even running to your barrack takes, then you wear to wear, you come back and stand, and it has to be impeccable. Every single element of the uniform has to be absolutely impeccable. And then he'll say 3 minutes, go run and come back. Okay, this will go on and on for about 10-15 minutes. By then your cabin is in a mess, complete mess. And then he'll say 15 minutes, I'll come and inspect your cabin. That's called a cabin cupboard inspection. So there, everything has to be absolutely, the cabin, the room has to be impeccable in terms of how the clothes are hung, how the bed is made. And just think about it, last 15 minutes, you are changing attire after attire, throwing there, going back, running, coming, running again. So it's all in a mess. So you have 15 minutes to put everything back in order. And this you have done, you are made to do repeatedly. It happens every now and then, depending on, sometimes the seniors, when you're in junior year, seniors make you do it when you're a junior. When, otherwise the instructor makes you do this. So one would think that, this is crazy, right? Why would you torture a to-be officer of the Indian Army in this manner? Is it stupid? It's absolute stupidity to do that. But it served an extremely, extremely, extremely important purpose. And that purpose is instilling all aspects of Karma Yoga into the trainees who are going to become officers of the Indian Army. That ultra deep, ultra depth in terms of the focus. And the same ability to focus into small details as well as big details. The small elements as well as the larger elements. And the aspect of perfection, because you may be going back and forth 2 minutes, 3 minutes. You may be absolutely, drenched with sweat or whatever it may be. But your attire, when you stand there in attention, has to be perfect. There is no excuse. Something near impossible, but there is nothing called impossible. You have to achieve it. So that sense of excellence, not only that sense of eye for detail, going deep into detail, small, big, everything, also performance up to the excellence or excellence in performance. Let's put it that way. And this is extremely critical because without it, dukkha maptum. In the case of the trainee officers, what is dukkha maptum? First of all, becoming an officer in the Indian Army itself is dukkha maptum. Because if you are not able to do this, there are other tougher elements of training, which there is no way you will be able to. And if you don't gain this level of perfection, this level of eye for detail, this level of discipline to do even mundane, boring, stupid, appearing to be stupid things with sincerity, you will never ever be able to win a war. Because to be able to achieve any major task, there are a multitude of stupid tasks that one must perform. To be able to achieve a major goal, there are a multitude of stupid, unnecessary, random, routine tasks that individuals have to perform. So you'll never forget about, winning a war. You'll never be able to even graduate to become an officer. And that is what Bhagavan says. You have to perform your karma yoga, your karma with samachara, with excellence, without which sannyasa is dukkhamaptam. And then he continues in verse 7.
Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha sarva bhutatma bhutatma purvannapi na lipyate.
So the one who is dedicated to karma yoga, one who has with sincerity gone into the details, done every step of the duty, not questioned whether it is, should I be doing it, should I not be doing it, why should I do this, I am going to become an officer of the Indian Army, I'm not a guy who's going to be a Jawan. Without questioning, getting that sense of discipline, performing it sincerely, performing it with excellence, one who does that in life, what does that person get? The person achieves Chitta Shuddhi, purified mind and intellect. That actually happens, you will see. There is that sense of peace, quiet, happiness, and cleanliness in the mind when you do action with this level of sincerity, dedication, again and again and again. So one who has done that, this yoga yukta, one who is yukta, united with this yoga, one who has controlled the mind and intellect, one who has subdued his senses. In that situation, this person is the boss. The reins of the mind and intellect, the reins of those horses that are going crazy, running away, they are in your hands. That one who has that control over the mind and intellect. That boss, that person has the realization that the self in me is the same or is similar to the self in all elements of creation. The self that is there in my body is the same or similar in the self that is there in all other elements of creation. And because of this realization, the person is not tainted. The person remains unafflicted by the sense of doership and the sense of achievership. I mean, honestly, after you run around like a fool for 25, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, yeah, I mean, you did it. Your cabin was perfect, perfectly fine. Everything seemed nice. But you don't feel that sense of, that I did it or I achieved it. That is true for a young medical student who's gone through immense amount of grinding and training and immersion into that knowledge. And then you perform your first surgery. Everyone else surrounding you will be like, wow, what an achievement. But this person who has gone through that grind somehow feels, calm, composed. That kind of elation that, say, the mother or the father, they feel. This person is a lot more, okay, I've done it. Yeah, what's the big deal? Even kids will say that. Yeah, so what's the big deal? So unaffected by kartritva, unaffected by bhoktritva, remains untouched. So what all that Bhagavan says, one of the reasons why I keep emphasizing this is we see it in our day-to-day life. So this is not, Bhagavad Gita is not something that Bhagavan has got from somewhere in the heavens, throwing it to you, unrealistic. Absolutely, that's the beauty of Bhagavad Gita. You will touch it with your heart and soul and mind every time you perform your work. It's real, it's true. We experience it on a day-to-day basis. So here it's like Bhagavan is saying this person thinks of everyone else as myself. That's not very unusual, right? If you take a child, for example, when children are like that, we say as pure as a child. What do you mean by when you say as pure as a child? That sense of purity in childhood, which kind of goes away in adulthood. That child, when that child is comprehending herself and comprehending her friends, or comprehending a small puppy or a snake on the ground, before the parents have said, oh, that snake will bite you, be careful. Before that sense of fear has gone into the child. The child doesn't know that fear. Before that, the child is perceiving all these elements of creation in a very, very sama manner, equanimous manner. Whether the child is looking into the mirror or not, whether the child is looking at the various objects of creation. Differentiation among aspects of creation increases exponentially with age because of this maturity of intellect. And then at some point in time in life, it starts going down again, that same differentiation. Typically with age. Age can be in terms of two things. Either it can be maturing or aging spiritually, or maturing or aging in age, in the time you have spent on this planet Earth. So either of those ages, you'll find a lot of old people who say, yeah, it's all the same. Everything is anyway the same at the end of the day. So the purity of the child, it kind of starts getting polluted. The discrimination keeps increasing, and then it starts decreasing again at certain point. The experiences of life make that happen. This person who does karma yoga sincerely, that person doesn't need a lifetime to get there, to get to that level of that purity of mind and intellect, that chitta shuddhi that the child has. The actions of a karma yoga, because they are not motivated by selfish desires, they lead to purity of that mind and intellect through performing that action itself, just like the child. And this leads to clarity that the self within is similar to the self which is outside, without, in other bodies. And this clarity, this realization removes the ego of I am the doer, that the sense of I and mine, that goes away. And with that ego gone, the person remains untainted. And Bhagavan gives a beautiful example. This verse is important because this is the verse which is our sadhana for this chapter. Verse 10.
ब्रह्मण्यादाय कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा करोति यः लिप्यते न स पापेन पद्मपत्रमिवाम्भसा.
So Bhagavan says, having placed in Brahman, having offered what? All actions, all the karmani. So when you place all your actions in the Brahman, that is Ishwararpana Buddhi. So various different ways in which Bhagavan ultimately gets to the same point. Having abandoned this attachment, tyaktva, that feeling of I and mine. Typically, what do? We place our actions in our own ego, on ourselves. That's Ahankara Adhyaya. Here Bhagavan is saying Brahmani Adhyaya. The yogi places the actions on the Brahman. That is Brahmanya Adhyaya. This essentially means giving up the attachment to the ego. That concept of service is worship. Serve as you are worshipping. So acting in such a manner, this person is not besmeared by sin. The disturbances that are there in your own mind through the externalities. And the example Bhagavan gives is like the lotus petal which is in water. So while the lotus petal is in water, but water does not touch the petal. So it's like mercury, when you throw it into the ground, it's just like a blob, it remains there. Similarly, water on a lotus petal, we have seen that so many times, it becomes like a droplet just hanging there. In full contact, it moves around, but the petal is untouched, doesn't get damp. So the entire sustenance, entire life of the lotus, the sustenance of the lotus, the growth of the lotus, all of that is dependent on that water. But the petal itself is untouched by it. This is relationless relationship. It doesn't permit itself to get damp, doesn't permit the water to seep into it. Similarly, human beings are all born with karma, just like water. The sustenance, growth, mere existence is all karma. But a yogi, while fully availing herself of all the karma, while fully participating in all of the activities, while fully moving around in the world, does not get affected by it, like the Padmapatram. So the sadhana, the thought which we practice our day-to-day living and actions should be this for this chapter. Try to be unaffected while you are performing your duties. And Bhagavan continues, we'll go to verse 12.
Yukta karma phalam tyaktva shantimapnoti naishtikim ayukta kama karena phale sakto nibhadyati.
Yukta in what? In the spiritual path, united in that path, which is Karma Yoga, having abandoned all the attachments, this person attains Shantim, eternal peace. That eternal peace that does not change, that is steady, doesn't suffer any change. Whereas, on the contrary, the one who does not practice Karma Yoga, the Ayuktaha, Bhagavan says, that person is impelled by the force of selfishness. The Karma Yogi is impelled by the force of Sangam Tyaktva, Karma Phalam Tyaktva, dedicating to the higher ideal, whereas the selfish performer is impelled by the force of desires. So impelled by the force of selfishness and desire, getting attached to the result or what is going to come out of the action is bound. You're tied by that same action, by that same expectation for result. And when that happens, this person comes to suffer sannyasa. How does a person with Chitta Shuddhi that has come through Karma Yoga, how does that person go through life? That Bhagavan covers in verse 13.
Sarva karmani manasa sanyasyasti sukham vashi navadvare pure dehi naiva kurvanna karayan.
So all actions that this person is performing, whatever they may be, whatever actions, which means everyone, irrespective of the kind of actions that you are performing, that person, when it is performed with a mind that is made up, that mind which is made up because of what? Because of renouncing all actions completely, with complete mindfulness. So this is very different from the Karma Yogi. So in Karma Yoga, the person dedicates all actions to the higher ideal, to Bhagavan, Ishwara Arpana Buddhi. Here Bhagavan, what Bhagavan is saying, Sarva Karmani Manasa Samyas Saste Sukham Vashi. So here Bhagavan is saying that you are giving up mindfully, with your mind, knowing. How does one do this? Bhagavan talked about it in the last chapter. Karmanya paschet. You are doing this with the knowledge that comes from recognition of action in inaction and inaction in action. karmanya karmanya paschet akarmanicha karmaya. So with that knowledge, that mindfulness of knowing what is action in inaction and inaction in action, with that mindfulness here you are doing. Very different compared to, dedicating what you're doing to Bhagwan, to the higher idea. And this person who mindfully renounces actions, this Dehi is the person who is in the body, the Deha. The body is the Deha. The Dehi rests in the city of 9 gates, Navadwarapura. Not doing anything, not acting, not causing any action. Neither acting nor causing any action. Na iva kurvan na karayan. So what are the 9 gates? The 9 gates are that's why Bhagwan uses the word Dehi, the dweller in the physical body. And the 9 gates are the 9 apertures in the physical structure of the human being. 7 of those are in the head, the 2 eyes, the 2 ears, the 2 nostrils, and the mouth. And 2 of those are in the body, reproductive system and excretory system. So the one who is dwelling in this 9-gated city, one calls it the city. So this person is dwelling in that without any, in peace. What does Bhagavan say? Sukham Vashi. In peace, the person is dwelling. So things are happening around this person, but the person is not either causing it to happen or herself part of the action. So in the presence of this person, everything happens, but she is not straining a bit to act. It's like the sun, in the presence of the sun, everything in the world is taking place. The birds are chirping, the rooster is crowing, the life is going on, we are all doing satsang. So the example that strikes nicely for this is like a traffic policeman. Extremely involved. Imagine a traffic policeman in the busy midst of a traffic junction, high traffic junction. Person is completely alert, is deeply involved into the traffic, extremely busy, observing, controlling, telling who to move, who to stop. In fact, in the olden days when traffic policemen were the norm, there were people, there were these, who used to do it like a drill. It used to be fun to stand and watch. As kids, we have stood and watched these traffic police. It's an amazing job that they do. And when the traffic is high, it's crazy. It's extremely busy. And then a traffic signal gets installed. So the same person who was so involved in activity, this person is standing there. In the presence of this person, the traffic policeman, everything is going on as it used to be. This person is neither doing anything nor is causing anything to be done. But in his presence, the traffic flows in an orderly manner because of the signal. So similarly, in the Navadwarapura, this person rests. And in the presence of that person, the world moves on. The person does what the person is supposed to do or required to do. And then Bhagavan continues in verse 16.
Jnane tu tadajnanam yesham nashitam atmanaha tesham adityavajnanam prakashayati tatparam.
Ignorance that pertains to the self veils the self. Sitting in the self, the ignorance veils the self. It's exactly like darkness that covers the room. Whatever is there in the darkness is covered by the darkness. Those whose ignorance pertaining to the self is removed, is destroyed. By what is it destroyed? By knowledge. Yapashyati shapashyati. Right? That person who is able to see because of that jnana, because of that knowledge, just like the light of the sun removes the darkness. And once the light of the sun has removed the darkness, whatever was hidden by the darkness is then revealed. So similarly, the light of knowledge removes the ignorance and then reveals what was veiled by that same ignorance. And what was veiled by that same ignorance? The Supreme, the highest, the Tat Param. Today we will not spend too much time, but I will request you sometime to go back to the satsang in verse 16 of chapter 5. I had recited a story of the Mudal Alvars. It's a beautiful story that depicts how in the light of the knowledge provided by two Alvars, the third Alvar witnessed the Supreme. So the light of knowledge first removes the darkness of ignorance and then reveals what was hidden by the darkness of ignorance, which is nothing but the Supreme. And what happens when that Supreme reality is revealed? Bhagavan covers that in verse 17.
Tadbuddhayastadaatmanaha tannishta tatparayanaha gacchantya punaravritti jnana nirdhuta kalmashaha.
So tad or tat is that. What is Bhagavan referring to? That Supreme. That tat. And Bhagavan says, tad buddhayaha. Their intellect, the buddhi, has become fully absorbed in that Supreme Self. Then Bhagavan says, tadatmanaha. Their mind has become fully absorbed in that Supreme Self. The buddhi has become fully absorbed, the mind has become fully absorbed in that Supreme Self. And with the mind and the intellect fully absorbed in that Supreme Self, tannishtaha, ever abiding, fully focused. Being absorbed, you are able to fully focus. And tat parayanaha, with that as the highest goal, with the Supreme as the highest goal. Mind and intellect fully absorbed, fully focused, and having as a supreme goal that Supreme. They reach or attain the state of no return. And how are they able to do that? Because the impurities, kalmashaha, have been washed away, have been destroyed, have been dispelled. Nirdhuta means dispelled by jnana, by knowledge. Sri Ramakrishna said, and I quote, Brahman is experienced vaguely through discrimination, somewhat vividly through meditation, and absolutely in its original splendor in samadhi. So to witness that in its absolutely, witness the tad, witness that Supreme in its absolute original splendor, you have the four aspects. Absorbed in it, mind and intellect, so that is two. Fully focused in it, and with it as the supreme goal. This is termed as Videha Mukti, which is what Bhagavan is saying by when he says Apunaravrittim. You reach, you attain a state of no return. Attain a state of Apunaravrittim, a state of no return into this being again. But before a person can reach that state of no return through this kind of a samadhi, how does the person who has attained that level through the spiritual path, but still alive, still in this body, still in this Navadvara Pura, how does this person go about day-to-day life, go about conducting herself in day-to-day life? This person who is a Jivan Mukta. So Videha Mukti happens after the soul leaves the body, the self leaves the body. Jivan Mukti has happened when the person is absolutely, completely absorbed, focused, dedicated with the Supreme as the ultimate goal. How does the person conduct on a day-to-day basis? That is covered in verse 18.
विद्या विनय संपन्नी ब्राह्मणे गविहस्तिनि शुनि चैव श्वपाके च पंडिता समदर्शिनः.
So, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. Vidya, knowledge. Vinaya, humility. The person who is endowed with knowledge and humility. Humility, I am not the doer. I am not the receiver. I am not the kartritva. I am not the bhoktritva. That is the ultimate state of humility. And Vidya, knowledge. The person having possessed herself with Vidya and Vinaya, the variety and differences that are perceived by the body, mind, and intellect, that do not overpower the clarity that the person has got through Vidya and Vinaya. The knowledge and humility, this aging process that we talked about earlier, that takes you away from being a child, right? See, this human being is a beautiful scientific creation, actually. You know, when you are born, you are the most dependent creature in the entire planet. The most dependent. A human baby cannot do anything without the mother. You know, you see a cow or a calf or a dog or anyone, very quickly they become self-resilient, self-reliant. But the human being, no, other than crying, pouring the lungs out, you can't do anything. Everything, you know, has to be fed, has to be cleaned, has to be done. Everything is dependent, complete 100% dependent. If you leave a human child just like that, the child will die. Whereas if you see a calf, within 1 or 2 hours, the calf is struggling to get up. Within about 2 hours, the calf has got up. Within about 2.5 hours, the mother doesn't hold the calf and feed the calf, milk. The calf finds its way. But then, having born in such an extreme state of dependency, the human being very quickly transcends, quickly grows. The growth is super fast. From dependence to independence to interdependence. Unbelievable pace. So, and as this growth happens, the discrimination in terms of, I'm not talking about the Viveka discrimination. I'm talking about the discrimination in terms of finding differences in elements of creation that keep going up. But the person who is endowed with this knowledge and humility, that person is able to overcome this discrimination that has kept in, this seeing differences in elements of creation. And such a Pandita, such a knowledgeable person is Samadarshinaha. View everything equally. They do not discriminate. There's no diversity in terms of age, sex, race, nationality, caste, creed, nothing. All elements of creation, Samadarshinaha. As Samadarshina, as the sun that shines equally on a Gandhanala or on river Ganges. Sri Ramakrishna said, and I quote, omniscience reveals the unity behind the seeming multiplicity. So fundamentally, there are 3 kinds of varieties in creation. We'll quickly cover those. One is Vijatiya Bheda. Bheda is distinguishing, discriminating, Vijatiya Bheda is the discrimination of different elements of creation. For example, stones, plants, animals, humans, and so on, various aspects of creation. Sajatiya Bheja is differences within in the same element. For example, within stones, you have marble and granite. Within plants, you will have mango tree, tamarind tree. Within animals, you will have an Alsatian dog and a poodle. Within people, we'll have white people, black people, brown people, tall people, short people, and so on. And Swagata Bheda is differences within one single entity, such as a granite can be a rock or a slab. A tree can be in the form of a root or a bark or a stem or a leaf. And a human being can, or an animal can be in the form of with one limb longer, another shorter, one eye blind, another not blind, or both eyes blind, or one arm not even there, one is there. So those variants are the Swagata Bheda. This person who has this knowledge, the Samadarshinaha, that person transcends these differences, goes above these differences. These differences are not there. The person doesn't even see the differences. And then Bhagavan continues. We'll go to verse 21.
बाह्यस्पर्शेष्वसक्तात्मा विन्दत्यात्मनि यत्सुखं सब्रह्मयोगयुक्तात्मा सुखमक्षयमश्नुते.
One whose mind is not attached in external sensory experiences. The experiences are there. The mind is not attached. That person finds the kind of internal peace, happiness in the self, within. Tripta. Atma Tripta, Atma Rati, Atma Santushti. That person. Such a person engaged in meditation on the Brahman, with mind and intellect absorbed, focused, enjoys eternal, endless happiness. Akshayam. Kshaya means something that has a limit. Akshayam is eternal. It is common perception in modern psychology that satisfying lower order needs leads to happiness. So if you have food, if you have rest, if you have security, safety, all the material aspects are taken care of, then we are happy. In fact, from Las Vegas to Washington, D.C., the entire, this world that has been the samsara that we see, for those of you who have been to these cities, or what we witnessed, before Trump finally let go of office, all of this entire thing is, that this is what is going to make me happy. Look at, the guy who was president of the United States of America, was he happy at the end of it all? So Las Vegas to Washington, D.C., this is the, bind. What binds people? Most accomplished people, by the way. They're not, incapable people or anything. Extremely accomplished. However, it is also seen that dissatisfaction among the lowest rung and the seniors most rung is also the same. So in an organization, for example, the CEO faces the same frustrations like a junior peon or a junior employee of the company. It's pretty identical. They're the same sukha and dukkha. And in fact, if there is a if there is an earthquake, both of them have the same fear. So in fact, we often see that the contentment at the lower levels of an organization are actually much higher. The stress levels are lower, acceptance is higher, contentment is higher. So overall happiness is higher. And that is also reflected in society. In the lower rungs of society, there is more sense of fulfillment. There is more happiness in the eyes that you see. Rabindranath Tagore, he said once, and I quote, "Working for love is freedom in action." And this Asaktatma that Bhagavan talks about here, she works and finds expression in devotion, surrender, and equipoise. And this attitude of working with surrender and equipoise, that attitude leads to a stage where this Asaktatma, this Karma Yogi, begins to feel the presence of the Supreme within the embodied individual. That bigger force, there is something bigger that is making things happen in my life. You actually feel it. You sense it. That bigger force, that feeling of that bigger force in various things that you're doing is very, very real. And that bigger guiding force that guides our actions, feeling that on a day-to-day basis, that leads to working for larger goals with higher purpose. So in the beginning, Bhagavan said, develop an Ishwararpana Buddhi. Do Karma Yoga. by developing Ishwararpana Buddhi and Prasada Buddhi. Here, it comes from within and you automatically do Ishwararpana. And this automatic Ishwararpana leads to Akshayam Sukham, or the state of happiness which has no decay. It is always Akshaya. There is no decay. It is permanent. And Bhagavan continues. We go to verse 24.
Yontas sukontara ramaha tattantar jyoti devayaha sayogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhuto digacchati.
This person whose happiness is within, that yogi, becoming like Brahman, attains absolute freedom, attains moksha, attains liberation. Nirvana is freedom. And in this context, it is freedom from dependence on external objects for fulfillment. What we had read earlier as Atma Tripti, Atma Rati, Atma Santushti. And in this manner, Brahma Bhutodi Gacchati, the person attains liberation. So the big difference between Jnana Karma Sannyasa and Karma Sannyasa, right? Where the person is able to sacrifice action through the knowledge of being able to distinguish action and inaction and inaction and action. And this person who is able to sacrifice action from within. In this manner, Bhagavan concludes the teaching of Karma Sannyasa. And then the next 3 verses before the end of this chapter are a very interesting summary of Dhyana Yoga, which is the next chapter, which is covered in detail in chapter 6. We will quickly go through the 3 verses.
Sparshan kritva bahirbahyam chakshuchaivantarde bhruvoho pranapanau samau kritva nasabhyantaracharinav yatindriyamano buddhihi munirmokshaparayanah vigati cha bhayakrodaha yasada mukta eva saha.
So Bhagavan is saying, after keeping outside, shutting out external sensory contacts, withdrawing from the outer world, and fixing the gaze as though between the 2 eyebrows, equalizing the outgoing prana and the incoming apana, the breath, the exhalation and the inhalation that is going through the nostrils, and with the senses, the mind and the intellect ever controlled, not controlling for a little bit of time, ever controlled, having liberation as the supreme goal. This sage, who is free from desires, free from fear, free from anger, Ichha, Bhaya, Krodha, free from all of that. This person is surely liberated forever. And Bhagavan finally concludes, how does this person doing all of this, how does this person meditate? That's in the last verse of the chapter. How do you meditate?
Bhoktaram yajna tapasam sarvalokamaheeshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam jnatva mam shanti mrichyati.
So Bhagavan says, while you are physically restraining yourself, mentally restraining yourself, restraining is a wrong word, it's not restraining, controlling, having everything in harness, having the control of the reins with you, rather than giving it to the body, mind and intellect, doing that. But how do you meditate after having done that? He says, know me as the receiver of all the sacrifices and the austerities. Know me as this great Lord of all the worlds, and know me as the friend of all the beings. And knowing me in this manner, you attain peace. Actually, from chapter 7 onwards, Bhagavan will get very deep into this know me, the second section of the Bhagavad Gita. So actually, I'm thinking, the last 3 verses also, I just did a quick summary, because we did Dhyana Yoga or Atma Samyama Yoga, and we will see when we do a quick revision of chapter 6, why Dhyana becomes Atma Samyama, right? So we just did it fairly recently. So I'm thinking, let me decide during the course of the week that maybe in the next satsang, I spend about 15-20 minutes revising chapter 6 and move on to chapter 7, because the second section. That decision I will take during the course of the week. Thank you very much. Hari Om. With this, we come to end of revision of chapter 5.
We'll go through today's verses. Arjuna Uvacha Sanyasam Karmanam Krishna Punaryogam Cha Shamsasi Yachreya Etayodikam Tanme Bruhi Sunishitam Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Sanyasa Karma Yogascha Nishreyasah Paravubhau Tayostu Karma Sanyasat Karma Yogo Vishishyate Yat Sankhye Prapyate Sthanam Tad Yogairapi Gamyate Ekam Sankyam Cha Yogam Cha Yap Pashyati Sa Pashyati Sanyasastu Mahabaho Dukkhamaptumayogataha Yoga Yukto Muni Brahma Nachireda Gacchati Yoga Yukto Vishuddhatma Vijitatma Jitendriyaha Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma Purvannapi na lipyate Brahmanyataya Karmani Sangam Tyaktva Kadoti Yaha Lipyate na sapapena Padmapatrami Vambhasa Yukta Karma Phalam Tyaktva Shanti Mapnoti Naishthiki Ayukta Kama Karena Phale Sakto Nibadyati Sarva Karmani Manasa Sanyasyasti Sukham Kashi Navadvare Pure Dehi Naiva Kurvanna Karayan Jnani Natu Tadajnanam Yesham Nashitamatmanaha Tesham Adityavajnanam Prakashayati Tatparam Tadbuddhayastadatmanam Tannishta Tatparayanaha Gacchantya Punaravritti Jnana Nirduta Kalpashaha Vidya Vinaya Sampanni Brahmani Gavihastini Shuni Chaiva Shvapaki Cha Pandita Samadarshinaha Bahya Sparsheshva Saktatma Vindatyatmani Yatsukam Sabrahma Yoga Yuktatma Sukhamakshaya Mashnuti Yonta Sukontara Ramaha Tattantar Jyotirishyaha Tayogi Brahma Nirvanam Brahma Bhuto Digacchati Sparshan Kritva Bahirbahyam Chakshu Chaivantare Bhuvo Pranapanau Samau Kritva Nasabhyantara Charinau Yatindriyamanu Buddhi Nirmukshya Parayanaha Vigati Chabhaya Krudo Yasada Mukta Eva Saha Bhuktaram Yajna Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam Jnatva Mam Shanti Mrichati Asatu Ma Sadgamaya Tamasu Ma Jyotirgamaya मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरि ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम
Hari Om. Thank you. Any thoughts, comments?
I have a question. I don't know whether it is, I've been bothering me quite some time. We say that we should not look for the result, but do our action. But are we not always wanting to reach the ultimate, to reach enlightenment? Isn't that a desire? That is my question.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, if you go back to Sadhana Chatushtaya, the last part of Sadhana Chatushtaya is Mumukshutva. Mumukshutva is desire for the ultimate, desire for the supreme. That is Mumukshutva. So, when we are bound by the desire for the ordinary aspects of the world, the desire for the Mumukshutva does not come in. So one of the aspects that Bhagavan talked about in chapter 5 is also, right, fully, the mind and intellect fully absorbed. The mind and the person fully focused and having the supreme as the goal. Fully absorbed in the supreme, fully focused on the supreme, having the supreme as the goal. For that to happen, the rest of the samsara aspects of Ichha need to be minimized, if not at least fully gone. They have to fully go. For one to become completely in samadhi, to become a Vidvat sannyasi, it has to go 100%. That is when
That means
the tad will be 100%, you will be absorbed in that tad. You will be fully mumukshutva.
that means the desire to reach moksha will automatically fall off. We will not be looking for it. Does it mean that?
When the desires for the day-to-day world are minimized and go away, then the only desire that remains is the desire to attain the supreme. And when you become thoughtless, chapter 6 will come to that, right? The Savikalpa Samadhi is that desire for that single supreme goal. That is Savikalpa Samadhi. Nirvikalpa Samadhi is when this desire, when you are deep into Savikalpa Samadhi, it automatically goes away. To get to Savikalpa Samadhi, you need effort. You have to have focus the mind, intellect, and everything into that single thought. But to get away from Savikalpa to Nirvikalpa, it is said that it happens on its own. So that goes away on its own, ultimately.
Thank you.
Single thought to thoughtlessness happens on its own.
Clear now. Thank you very much.
Any other thought, comments? Okay, if nothing else, then we can say Hari Om, and next Saturday we meet again. Next Saturday is what? 20. Actually, you know, around next Saturday is 20th. So a week after that, we started the satsang on 28th of March last year. So we'll have our anniversary coming up shortly. 1 year of satsang. And I think, yeah, if we take too much time on chapter 6 next satsang, then we'll start with section 2 after 1 year. Okay, thank you all. Hari Om. See you next Saturday.